Hey everybody, it's Dr. Quinn here, and I'm going to take a look at week 5 in writing 393. Hopefully by the time you're looking at this, you'll have submitted your final for the Quick Start Guide, and you've started thinking about the other assignments to come. In the week 5, you may not have the specific class date. This is just the date of when I was in a particular section. But week 5 will have a list of overview content, learning resources, discussions, and assignments. So in this week, we're going to talk about different resources from UMGC's Career Services. You'll talk about writing memos, video tutorials on how to cite a source throughout a paragraph, because we're moving from the pure technical assignments 1 through 3 to a hybrid technical, professional, academic mix. And in that, you're going to go back to some of the essay work that you've done before when you documented sources. And so we're going to talk about how do you document those sources. All right. So we're also going to talk about cover letter tips. That's coming up for writing assignment 5, and discussions about analyzing content from ChatGPT. In addition, you're going to submit writing assignment 4. So as you click on the learning resources, you'll see resumes and cover letter help, experienced and career changer samples, information on the basic memo. The memo is going to be like the first page of your document to Maria Carmen, okay, for writing assignment 4, that internal memo to the supervisor. So that's why it's being brought up here. And in addition, at the bottom of this, you're going to see how to cite a source throughout a paragraph. And remember, if I'm worried about your borrowing of sources and you submit an early draft of writing assignment 4, you'll get feedback from me on that. So your resources, if you scroll down, you'll notice it's just this one page, and a lot of it is reference content. You know a lot of this already. It's just this is a sort of space in Leo for you to be able to come back and take a look at the content. The discussions for the week, we've got resume and cover letter work that we're going to be doing, and how are you going to set up your resume, because there's so many options, and a lot of it depends on the work field that you are already in. Let's see, we've got the different samples that repeat from the learning resources. And then we want you to analyze a set of instructions written by ChatGPT. It's interesting. You'll notice in the earlier announcements, I did have a post about ChatGPT already, and about UMGC's policies on that, and for students to do some pre-writing and practice. The college has no problem with it, but you have to quote everything you borrow. And if ChatGPT writes you your resume from scratch, you have to quote the entire thing, which means you didn't do any of the original writing. And the rationale behind not using ChatGPT in a writing class is that we want to see your writing. But I know realistically that some people do use ChatGPT in their professions, and so we kind of want to talk about what can ChatGPT do and not do, and that's where this discussion comes from. We talk about what was it good at and where were some of the problems. So as you enter your actual professional fields, you can see its potential and its limitations, even though in our assignments you'll be writing from scratch. Okay, so that's what those discussions are about. The assignment that you're going to be working on is writing assignment 4, the report to the supervisor. So let's just view this. I'm going to view this as a learner, so I see it in the exact same way you do. Let's go into writing assignment 4 so we can go over it together. Okay, you've got 2 things in here that you want to pay close attention to: the PDF overview and the accompanying rubric. This is my promise, this is my contract to you, that I will grade you based on this rubric. We'll go over the rubric at the very end. Let's take a look at the report. The report is detailed. And the reason for the detail is that it's going to give you the background as if you were working at this business, and it's going to give you opportunities to find areas of improvement that at least somewhat relate to your major. You'll find problems with this business's financial situation, cybersecurity presence, social media presence, like issues with HR, all these sort of issues. And if your discipline doesn't match any of that, just go with your gut. This is undergraduate level work, so you don't have to be an expert in any of these fields. But if you go back and think about the research that we've done in the discussions about, well, not the research so much, but the library tutorials, the idea behind the tutorials earlier in the term was to remind you of the research that you will now be doing on this assignment. Okay, so you've been hired by Maria Carmen, and you're the assistant manager of All Washed Up. It's a local car wash business in Rockville, Maryland. And as the assistant manager in this business, you're noticing that there are a lot of practices that the business follows that aren't best practices. So you're going to write a short report. It's 1,400 to 2,000 words, single space before the references. You will integrate 2 graphics that will practice from the technical integration of like callouts and figures and all of that and labels. You will integrate 4 sources, at least one which has to come from a scholarly journal or credible trade journal. So that's where that library research that we practice, those tutorials will come in handy. So we've got background on the company. You can read it here about how it's priced, what the workers do, how the customers engage. We've got this history. It's important to have this information simply because you need to know the background of your audience. If you're going to be doing a cybersecurity paper and Carmen has a degree in cybersecurity, you may approach this differently. But you'll notice that she does not. Doesn't have that technical background. So it's going to give you an understanding of how technical do you need to get. And if you do get highly technical, especially if you're borrowing content from a source that gets highly technical about risk of being hacked, for example, then you may have to define particular terms that you feel that your primary audience, which is Maria, and your secondary audience, the other workers who may read this report, if you make recommendations that change what they do, you have to define terms so they understand exactly where you're going with that, okay? So here are all the different issues. Please note, you're not focusing on all of them. I want you to drill down and focus on 2. I think in a 1,400-page report, 2 would be great. We've even narrowed it down and talked about issues with, marketing, advertising, social media, cybersecurity, business-specific issues for business majors, and so on and so forth. Okay, so for your task, again, some of this information is repeated from the beginning. 1,400 to 1,200 words, the 4 sources. Your main sections are going to be a problem and solution section, and you will, of course, be required to have 2 graphics. And anytime you document sources, it'll be APA. The whole document doesn't have to be laid out like an APA essay. The only formatting that you have to consider APA is that in-text citation and an accompanying reference. Okay, so things to consider. Paper is permanent. Make sure your word forms are accurate, your grammar and mechanics are correct. You're doing this in the professional setting, and keep sort of technical writing, precision concepts in mind. And as I mentioned earlier, know your audience. You don't want super gigantic chunky paragraphs. You want them to be accessible, blocking them in, like single space paragraphs with an extra space in between is a really nice document style that looks, doesn't look sort of overwhelming. If it's like if you read an Instagram or like a Facebook or social media post and they have a gigantic chunky block of text, it ends up being TLDR, right? Nobody reads it because it's just too long and you can't find your way around it. Use signposts and headings to help navigate the document. Think about the illustrations. I can't stress this enough. That it is important to not just use clip art. Clip art is not useful. Purposeful images, data-driven images that you want to use. Flowcharts, a very small table, a graph of some sort. It's not a good idea to just define a photo of a car and that's your first image, even though this is a car's business. And you want to avoid being too fluvius, the word that I'm thinking of, but you definitely don't want to write due to the fact that because of something, just because of something, direct and to the point. You want to knock this out and not be overwhelming. Here's the order of content. Your memo, imagine a memo is like an email that you write to her and the report's the attachment. All of this should be in one file. Please make my life easier. I will make your life easier, I promise. But the memo is page 1. The executive summary is page 2. You don't have to put page numbers on those sections, but after that you certainly can. And I can help you with any of that formatting. The major sections of the assignment of the problem and suggested solutions. This is the body of the report itself. That's where the majority of your content is. That's where all of your sources and images need to be. No images in the executive summary, no images in the memo. Your conclusion wraps up, restates major points, that presents the maybe a succinct way of the recommendations, kind of condensed into a sentence or two, and then a separate references page. Importantly, it says, you remember how I've been giving feedback on students, writing assignments 1 through 3, and I said, either do Saturday or Sunday, just depending on, my work week schedule, so I can get everyone feedback. What we're going to do for writing assignment 4 is I'm going to push the deadline a couple of days. Instead of it being due on the Tuesday of the week, I'm going to make it due the Friday, like into the next week. The Tuesday, I'm going to make the draft date, and the Friday, I'm going to make the final date, because everybody's required in this assignment to do a draft. Let me show you briefly what the format could look like for this document. A memo on one page, an executive summary on one page with the problem and solution. I love headers in an executive summary. Think of the executive summary as a short summary to the entirety of the text, and I will have a video tutorial on executive summaries as well coming up this week. Then the next page starts the problem section, and then I'm just showing that you're going to have a problem section, a solution section, a conclusion, and your references. These may go into multiple pages, but I just wanted to show you organizationally how this document is going to be laid out. Your memo, by the way, you've got the video tutorial on the memo. It's short and it's sweet and it's to the point. It doesn't need to be long. The content of the memo, dear Maria, it's going to be a couple of sentences long. Okay. Now let's go back into the assignment, and I want to look at the rubric. Let's just see how you're going to be graded. Length. Do you have enough details to be convincing? And please don't go over 2,200 words. Okay. Being succinct is also really important, and that's a skill for technical writers. Don't be too wordy. She may not read it all, right? Number of graphics, you got to have 2. Of course, you want to label those graphics. Sources, at least 4, and 1 needs to be named, and one of them needs to be from a scholarly or trade journal from the library databases. You got to have that memo. You're going to have that executive summary. You're going to have a problem and solution section. So you can just use this rubric as a gradable checklist to make sure you've included all of the pertinent information you need for the week. Okay. The relevance of the sources used, like were they in the right place, and were they good quality sources? So if you're just going to .orgs or listicle articles, like the 10 best ways to protect your computer, that's not good professional research. That's just finding a listicle. So I'm really looking at quality research from trustworthy sources, some in the library and some outside of the library. Did you accommodate the secondary audience? Obviously, you're writing toward Maria, but did you think about the other people that may be affected by the content, like certain people in the IT department, or certain people in maybe the customer-facing side, and how they handle credit cards, and the training and the content you need to provide them? And did you find terms where necessary? Is the tone appropriate? That kind of thing. The message and quality of your graphics, if it's clip art, low quality. But if it's a small table you built showing like a before and after for staffing, high quality, right? Or a flow chart showing who answers to whom. A short conclusion. Did you set up your references in APA format? And if you have any questions on that kind of documentation, let me know. I can always help you. And the more you put into your draft of the assignment, the more specific I can be in feedback to get you exactly where you want to go for the final. Now, language choices, minor grammar readability problems, major grammar readability problems, wholesale communication issues. You can see how the categories are set up. And revision. This is a super high number. Please note that if you only submit on Tuesday for the draft and you get feedback but don't submit for the final, then I have to go back through and give you 43 less points for the assignment. So please make sure to do the revision and think about the feedback. Technical writing doesn't always happen in a vacuum. We work together. We get feedback from one another as professional writers in our respective fields, and that's what this is practicing. So that's my video for the week. I know this was jam-packed, but I look forward to working with you and hearing your questions as they arise.